Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Comhairle, which is being conducted from the Council Chamber and remotely through Microsoft Teams. And before we begin, I will ask Councillor Duncan McInnes to lead us in prayer.
O most gracious and eternal God, we give you thanks this afternoon for our gathering here, both in the chamber and online, for this important council meeting. And Lord, we give thanks for the guidance that you have provided for all councillors, officials over the past number of months as they have been deliberating over budget setting. And Lord, in particular, we give thanks for the leader, the convener, the chief executive, and in particular, Norman, our chief finance officer, for having the expertise, the guidance, and your helping hand in making sure that we as council members were provided with what is clearly a difficult balanced budget at this particular difficult time for us as a Comhairle and for many other councils in Scotland. And Lord, we pray that you would guide us through all the deliberations and the decisions we do make at this council meeting, and that you would guide us with the wisdom and the prudent management that has been provided to councillors at last year's budget setting council and the councils before us. Their prudent management has ensured that the reserves have been in place to make sure that we as a Comhairle move forward, and in particular make sure that our workforce is well looked after and have no compulsory redundancies. And that is something that we all have to be very pleased that we are able to do that. And Lord, at this particular time, we pray for those that have suffered losses over recent weeks with their connections to the council. And Lord, we pray for Councillor George Murray and John A. McKeever, and we wish them a speedy recovery. And Lord, in particular, we pray for all the staff and all the members within the Comhairle here, and all their families and all the households that they come from, and particularly the staff that are our greatest asset as a Comhairle, and that we welcome all the extra additional work they have done through such difficult and challenging times since we had the cyber attack last November. And it simply shows their professionalism in being able to fight the odds and make sure that they have delivered us with what is excellent papers in going forward as a Comhairle. And we ask all those things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor McInnes. The meeting is now being recorded and will be available on the Comhairle's website following the meeting. I am ruling item 2 as urgent. And I'll now ask Derek Mackay, Governance and Elections Manager, to read this errand. Derek.
Nachgarum.
On the show.
Leader. Duncan McInnes, MBE. Fara agus Vatersay, Kenneth John McLean. Ian A. McNeil. Mr. Jess Eriske agus Benavilla. Ian M. MacLeod. Susan Thompson. Usta Tua, Mustafa Hussein. Ushtan Robertson. Naherach, I have apologies from Councillor Paul Finnegan. Grant Fulton.
Hamisha.
Skiernan Loch, Robert Mackenzie.
Yeah.
Angus Morrison. Skirug agus Carlebach, Ronald Fraser.
Michelle.
Norman Misty MacDonald. Tushir agus Nish, John N. MacLeod.
Hannah Shaw.
Donald McSween. Lochatua, Donald F. Crichton. Apologies from Councillor John A. McKeever. Colin McLean.
Anio.
John of Lochatua, Ian M. Macaulay. Malcolm K. MacDonald. Gordon Murray. John of Jess. Ray Mackenzie.
Yeah.
Angus McCormack. Dr. Francis MacDonald. Murray, sorry. Yep. With apologies from Councillor George Murray, Kieran Rue, Norrie MacDonald and Finlay M. Stewart. 26 members of the Comhairle present.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek. And we'll now go to the agenda. Item number 1 on the agenda is declaration of interest. And members are asked to declare any interest they have on any items on the agenda. It would be helpful if members expressed why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. Any members declaring an interest? Okay. Item number 2 is a report of the meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee of 20th February 2024 at 3 p.m. This report of the meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee at 3 p.m. today has been uploaded to SharePoint. I will now ask the leader, Councillor Paul Steele, to present to us the 2024-25 budget as proposed by the Policy and Resources Committee. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Convener. This is the second budget of this term of the Comhairle, my second as leader, and the 7th I've been involved in as councillor. And it's fair to say that the process is not becoming any easier, quite the reverse. Service reductions, cuts, savings and restructuring are just some of the words and phrases that punctuate our deliberations. We aspire to change them to words like invest, improve, support and increase, but we need resources to do that. The financial pressures facing all councils, exacerbated by lack of progress at national level with developing a sustainable financial framework for local government, sudden political interventions at party conferences, our continued dependence on the floor mechanism and a woeful lack of island proofing of budgets has made an already difficult process seem at times almost insurmountable. But here we are, fulfilling one of our primary duties, presenting a balanced budget. Our budget strategy and planning process began in mid-2023, and it has once again been a measured, considered and remarkably consensual process, working once again openly and transparently through the Budget and Strategy Board, member seminars, the in-depth budget workshop, Policy and Resource Committee, and of course as the Comhairle. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the hard work of all members and the Budget and Strategy Board in particular, representing as it does all wards and political groups, in exploring in some depth the options which our officers reluctantly brought before us, and ultimately setting, as we should, a political steer for what is now before us in the budget and council tax setting reports. I would like to thank our officers, Malcolm, our Chief Executive, and Norman, our Chief Financial Officer, for their officer leadership of the budget process and for calmly managing the complexities caused by very late provision of the local government financial settlement and equally late clarification, a process not yet completed, of some important questions in Scottish Government's budget. Special thanks are due to the finance team who have prepared all the supporting documents within the budget folder, despite not having access to the financial ledger since November of last year. I know the hard and extra work which the accountancy team, supported by employees in all services, have put into the preparation of these documents, and it's a tribute to their work that we are able to consider this budget at our usual time of mid-February. That was certainly not the expectation last December. Finally, I would like to thank employees in all services who have assisted the finance team in preparing options for discussion with members. Despite all these difficulties and having to deal with some of the highest public sector pay awards in recent political memory, a high but thankfully reducing rate of inflation, I am pleased and indeed proud of all our efforts to recommend once again a balanced and competent budget. Sadly, it does not allow for growth in our services, but it at least does not reduce or worse still abolish them. We've once again been able to do much to support people as best we can. The Comhairle best supports its community by adhering to its key tasks: delivery of statutory and non-statutory services, community leadership, and effective external advocacy for our communities and local government. It's the first of these tasks which is largely the subject of this budget speech, and at a time when we are all reading of service cuts and reductions in older people support, sport and recreation activities and facilities across Scotland, and closures of community centres, youth groups and libraries, we are seeking to maintain all our current services. We all know that if the current trajectory continues, where flat cash does not even mean flat cash, this situation will change. But once again, we have been able to present a budget which supports our communities with our jobs, our services and our political advocacy, despite having managed once again a real terms financial cut, this time of around 1.5 million. We do not forget that for many people in the Western Isles, the cost of living still remains a cause of anxiety and concern. And I'm particularly pleased that despite the huge financial demands on us, and thanks to our good management of the fund, we have been able to maintain, with the support of the island's Cost Crisis Emergency Fund, our Cost of Living Support Fund. The fund has supported a number of groups, organisations and communities, including direct support to food banks throughout the Western Isles. The whole theme of our budget has once again been to protect frontline services to the public as much as possible, with a prudent, sensible approach to the realities of the financial situation. But it's been a difficult process of service change that has left many services stretched. Identifying another £1.7 million of service reductions, it's important to note that except to a very minor degree, these are not efficiency savings, these are service reductions, has been a demanding and difficult process for our officers as well as ourselves. COSLA and every other council throughout Scotland is saying very loudly to both governments that the financial position of local government is wholly unacceptable, practically unsustainable, and will predictably and sadly lead to service failure, and therefore loss of support and dignity to individuals and to ever-reducing community cohesion. Is that the vision for the 21st century Scotland or the UK? The sad fact is that it doesn't have to be this way. There are numerous examples of respected and empowered local authorities throughout Western Europe, funded in a manner which reflects their work, their aspirations and their legal duties. Whatever the good intentions of the Verity House Agreement, its signatories have to deliver very soon meaningful and effective reform to the structures, funding and culture of the public sector in Scotland, or every part of it is going to diminish. And who will be the principal losers of that process? As always, the most vulnerable people in our communities. But on the positive side, we have done much and there's much which we can and should do. Once again, our officers have done some great work in accessing funds such as RCGF for capital projects, and we have once again made a balanced and equitable choice between distribution of our Crown Estate funding among wards and communities, and recognising the need to support islands-wide strategic projects. We will consider in April not just how the Crown Estate can support the coastal communities it is intended to benefit, both directly at ward level and through the use of strategic use of funding, some of which was discussed earlier today with the budget amendments. At the same seminar next month, we will also look at how we wish to engage UK government on how we spend the £20 million awarded to the Western Isles through the Levelling Up Partnership process. This will be a welcome, to say the least, addition to our woeful level of capital funding. It will enable developments to take place which we would be completely unable to support either in whole or in part from our own funds. But I return to my primary duty today to present to you a balanced budget with clear recommendations for your approval. It is not, of course, the budget I or any other member of the Chamber would wish to see presented, but once again, the Coroner has a draft budget which aims to manage our scarce resources in a way which continues to deliver the services on which our communities depend, and which still, but only just, supports sufficient capacity for the Coroner to take forward its own political strategy, its policies, its community leadership for the communities of the Western Isles, and our all-important work on public sector reform, renewable energy and net zero developments, as well as community empowerment, apprenticeships, economic development, and the lesser seen work on such vital areas as financial inclusion, employability and resilience. This year, we have seen a small increase in the general revenue grant of around 2.3 million, but after the deduction of commitments for current year pay and other government priorities, that increase turned into an effective reduction of around 1.5 million. So this is a budget which has had to reflect absolute realism. And once again, we have to recognise that the volatility of the world and national economies is such that the need to revisit the budget mid-term is distinctly possible. Having reserves to use when times are hard remains, in my view, an essential element of a responsible budget strategy. If reserves are diminished or used up and there's no capacity within the budget, no service can be provided. Without the Coroner's policy of retention of a proportionate level of reserves, we would have been considering the consequences of finding £3.7 million rather than 1.7 million of savings. And that would have seen damaging and unprecedented cuts in our public services, and almost certainly an end to a policy of no compulsory redundancies as an instrument of budget control. But that, thankfully, is not where we are today. If this budget is agreed, our reserves, in addition to 3.5 million minimum balance held, will give us around 2.4 million to start the equally difficult budget planning for 2025-26 and hopefully for 2026-27 also. It's been said before, but it's worth repeating. We can only spend the reserves once. The balanced budget before you today includes using 2 million of reserves and around 300,000 from freezing recruitment on some vacant posts to address the deficit. Just to be clear, we need and want to fill these posts, and many of them in health and social care are already accounted for in the IGB budget, so meeting that target of 300,000 will be a struggle. To find more means that essential posts will have to be left vacant. At the moment, that leaves us with 2.4 million to start next year's budget planning, with no indication that next year will be any easier. If it's possible, I'm sure that the Chamber wishes to protect community transport, library and other services, and if any additional funding becomes available, that option will be open to members. But we have to be clear, excessive dependence on vacancy savings places more pressure on services and employees and is not a long-term solution. Regrettably, we are still working with one-year settlements from government, which makes strategic financial planning particularly difficult and necessitates the identification of reserves to mitigate these significant year-on-year variations. Inflation is still likely to be around 4% for most of 2024-25, and public sector pay likely to reflect that figure. Very disappointingly, as well as limiting our choices on the tax we can raise, council tax, Scottish Government has chosen to intervene in our budget preparations at the last minute by declaring its intention to withhold funding from councils unless we guarantee that we will employ a fixed number of teachers. It remains our position that councils should have the choice as to how they spend their funds locally, to employ people, teachers or any other posts according to needs as we judge them and to make choices for which we are accountable. We all know that if savings cannot be made in one area, they will logically have to come from another. These are exactly the kind of choices we were elected to make, having listened to our officers' advice. For health and social care, a service which we all highly value, I'm pleased to propose that we retain the practice of recent years of maintaining the allocation to the Integration Joint Board at previous years' levels, together with additional funding included in the settlement. We retain our commitment to our much valued Inter-Island Air Service, for which we receive no local or national additional assistance, despite the huge rise allocated to other public service obligation routes in Scotland, and to retaining support for additional support needs provision at last year's levels. On capital, there is little to report. The level of grants still falls way short of what is required to maintain existing assets, not exciting, typo. They may be exciting too, but provides little for development of facilities. So in conclusion, what you have before you is a balanced budget based on realistic and prudent financial planning, and one which I strongly commend to you for your approval.
Thank you very much, Leader. And can I have a seconder, please, for the Leader's budget?
I second the Leader's budget.
Seconded by the Deputy Leader, Councillor Duncan McInnes. There are two amendments which have been circulated to members, or circulated the email to all members last night. The first one is proposed by Councillor Ian Macaulay and seconded by Councillor Francis Murray, and I will invite Councillor Macaulay to present his amendment. Councillor Macaulay.
Chair. Comhairle agreed to make representation to COSLA to lobby the Westminster Government to re-examine and modify the Public Loans Board mechanism whereby long-term council debt is handled. All councils have historic debts with payment periods ongoing well into the future, with a payment of the capital sum being paid via revenue each year, which in part represents repayment of interest on these loans. As a result of the high interest rates that were in place at the time, we are now paying excess amounts of interest. We are seeking that the interest element of these historic loans are now re-examined and either written off in full or reprofiled over a longer period with no additional interest, thus reducing the annual payment for all councils. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Macaulay. Does the Leader and Deputy Leader accept the amendment from Councillor Macaulay and Councillor Murray? Seconder, the amendment is seconded by Councillor Francis Murray. Yeah, sorry. And do the Leader and the Deputy Leader accept these amendments?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, we'll now go to the second amendment, and it's proposed by Councillor Susan Thompson and seconded by Councillor Ray McKenzie. And I'll now invite Councillor Thompson to present her amendment to the Chamber.
Thanks, Convener. The Council agrees not to implement the following savings proposals. Number 3, bus stations, 60,000. Number 5, community transport, 120,000. Number 30, libraries, 20,000. Number 37, special education transport, 30,000. The above to be funded by increasing the assumption on savings through the non-filling of vacant posts from 300,000 to 530,000, with the caveat that no ASN posts be included in this number.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. And you're seconded by Councillor Ray McKenzie. Do the leader and the deputy leader accept this amendment, leader?
No.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we will go to formal debate then. And we will now consider the second amendment proposed by Councillor Susan Thompson, seconded by Councillor Ray McKenzie, and against the motion proposed by the leader, seconded by the deputy leader. The order of the debate will be the mover of the motion, who is the leader, and the mover of the amendment, Councillor Susan Thompson, then the seconder of the amendment, Councillor Ray McKenzie, and the seconder of the motion, Councillor Duncan McInnes. And any member who wishes to speak can do so for 5 minutes, but members can only speak once during the debate. Councillor Gordon Murray.
Point of order. I think the mover of the motion comes after the mover of the amendment.
My apologies. Yes, the seconder of the motion, mover of the amendment, then the seconder of the motion, and then the seconder of the amendment. Yes, thanks for correcting me, Councillor Murray. So I'll ask the leader, ask the mover of the motion to speak.
Thank you, Convener. And thank you for the amendment. Unfortunately, I can't accept it at this stage. So we've been through a long, detailed review of our budget lines, and I can say that despite the difficult situation we find ourselves in, we have worked quite well together as members and officers to get to this point. But the 4 lines that we're being asked not to implement today are 4 that hadn't been identified even as late as Tuesday as areas so that we shouldn't look at to find savings in. So one thing that would be beneficial, I think, going forward, and unfortunately we weren't able to do it this year, is a prioritisation of savings options. So I think if we had that in place, then we'd have the wider view from the wider Comhairle on which of the savings we wouldn't have to take if more funding becomes available. I think with this amendment, we're in a position to note that there is an interest in prioritising savings options and protecting these 4 if possible, and Council can discuss that should we be in a fortunate position of receiving extra funding in the future, but to do that in as strategic a way as possible. I don't think it would be right to accept these ahead of other savings options that we're agreeing today. As we made clear earlier, we may struggle to find the 300,000 from non-filling of vacant posts, so to add an extra 230,000 to that when things are so tight isn't something that I can support. In terms of the lines themselves, I would say the bus station operation will involve a reduction of a post, but also a review of the service being provided. There are potential income streams and funding from other sources that will be carried out as part of that review. In terms of community transport, we've discussed a review of that for a number of years, and it's right that we do it. The savings highlighted and agreed are an unfortunate result of the situation we find ourselves in financially. But in terms of needing to make savings, these are the decisions that we have to take. Likewise, a reduction of a part of a post in the library service is a saving we can take and still provide a service. The final line in special education transport is one that I wouldn't be comfortable taking either, but I'm reassured by officers that is possible because of the anticipated reduction in users of the service. That alone will realise the savings proposed. If the situation changes and new demand comes forward, then the department will deal with it, and we may have to find extra resources in year. Another reason it's important for us to have some level of reserves available to use for us. So I very much appreciate members for agreeing with the level of reserves that we're setting in this budget proposal, and that this amendment isn't looking to reduce or diminish them at this stage. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Leader. I'll now call on the mover of the amendment, Councillor Susan Thompson, to speak.
Thank you, Convener. Excuse me. This is a fairly straightforward amendment, and I had hoped to be an uncontentious one. We have identified 4 areas where we do not want to see any reduction in budget and consequently service, and we have identified from our reading of the papers a source of funding to facilitate this, namely vacant posts. That said, should other funding streams, preferably external funding streams, be identified that would bring about the same effect, then I believe we would all be supportive of that. We are not suggesting that this cannot be supported from other sources. Supporting this amendment will enable the continued support of the highly valued work of third sector providers of community transport, such as Taxa Uist, who provide such a valuable service to the community. Taxa operate throughout North and South Uist, Benbecula, Eriskay, Grimsay and Bernery. The community transport service they and others like them throughout these islands provide enable clients to attend medical appointments, daycare, adult learning and respite, as well as shopping and access to other appointments that they need to attend. With regard to the library service, anecdotally, we all knew how important our library services are. Many members on numerous occasions have extolled the virtues of and the value of libraries. Following the Scottish Library Information Council review, we now have the evidence. Not only are these vital social and community spaces essential for education, health and well-being, providing equality of access to reliable and trusted information through its network of branches, its mobile provision and its online presence, they're improving quality of life in a measurable, tangible way. The SLIC survey identified that the library service actually contributes to saving money to library users during this Westminster-created cost of living crisis. That is most welcome. The survey also highlights the positive contribution the Western Isles Library Service is making towards supporting children's learning and improving quality of life. Further justification where it needed to support this amendment. All the services identified contribute towards our strategic priorities, supporting children, families and young people, and supporting caring and resilient communities and quality of life. Surely, continuing to support the provision of special education transport is key in supporting families and caring communities. Members have already acknowledged earlier today when discussing the evening bus service that provision of these services influence decisions that families will make when choosing the Western Isles as their home. In light of all of this, I would urge you to support this amendment. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. Can I now call on the seconder of the motion, Councillor Duncan McInnes, to speak?
As just following on from the leader, it's clear that we as a COLA have had quite an open and transparent process over a number of months to have a look at what we knew was going to be a difficult budget ahead of us. And I think it's really professional of the officers in each department to have come up with a list of savings, and looking at 1.7 million pounds of savings wasn't easy. And certainly when we're looking at this amendment where we're looking at 13% of those savings, you know, after us having discussed all the savings for several months, I think we have to see that the prudent management of the service has been very good for this COLA over the past number of years. And looking at vacant posts, I think one has to prioritise what those vacant posts we do have and what are needed in the future, because there is no doubt as we move forward with some significant and major development. We've always heard, you know, we have to make sure that our departments are fully funded, cater for all the developments that go ahead. And I would certainly not recommend that we move or support this amendment at all. And I commend the budget that we already have to the whole COLA.
Thank you very much, Councillor McInnes. I'll now call on the seconder of the amendment, Councillor Ray McKenzie, to speak. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Convener. Well, I think this week at least we've been fairly unanimous in the decisions that were taken, and I think you know, there's been a broad agreement across the board to date and today in particular. So, you know, I certainly support a lot of what has been said. I do think that these 4 items in their own way, they're of importance. We were told by the Chief Executive last week that there was over 100 vacant posts. Now, some of these will obviously be of a much smaller value, if you could say, but in terms of pounds and salary and so forth. But there's obviously a lot involved there, and this is not it's in any way suggesting that these posts be not fulfilled, but some of them won't be fulfilled or filled at a later date. And I think that the money spent on these 4 items will be well spent. To take the bus station, what in effect this means that the withdrawal of one person, the job in this particular bus station means that it'll only be open for a driver's office, and that'll be it. No public, no. And as somebody from Stornoway, I'm not particularly affected by that, but certainly the outlying areas of Lewis and Harris will be affected, and of course the tourists. And we're led to believe that there's going to be a huge explosion of cruise ships and tourists in the town and all the rest of it. And I think this is for all it is, £60,000 is a vital community asset. Community transport. Well, I'm not going to go through, repeat what Susan said, and I think we all know the position. But obviously, Euston in particular with 76,000, Barra 40,000, North Blocks with 5,000, Eriskay 10,000, S 12,000. You can go on. They're all going to lose out on this, and which is obviously again very unfortunate for the outlying areas. Sorry, youth. Only outline in Lewis. Then you have the libraries, and again, Susan, I think, has covered that point. And the special education transport, I think people throughout the community will appreciate what this provides for a mere £30,000. So we have the money to do that. It has not been spent at the present time. So I think these 4 items, I hope you would support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mackenzie. I'll now open it out to debate. Should any member want to speak, you have, as I said previously, 5 minutes to speak. And I also said that each member can only speak once during the debate. Does anyone want to come in here? If not, we will just go to our roll call of members in. Sorry. Okay. Summing up, which is the mover of the amendment, speaks first, who is Councillor Thompson, and then the mover of the motion. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks for building the tension there.
Okay.
In summing up, I'll be very, very brief. We have identified the areas that we want to protect, and we have identified a source of funding to do that. And I'll leave the rest with the members here.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. I'll now ask the leader to sum up.
Thank you very much, conveners. I'll try to be equally as brief. I want to thank Councillor Mackenzie for his comments. I think it has been quite consensual, and it's great to see the way the councillors come together to look at these budget savings. And like I say, when it comes down to 4 lines, it's really good to see that kind of spirit. And I think we're working quite well together as a corner to the stage. But just in terms of the posts that were mentioned, obviously Councillor Murray earlier on asked for a report for a bit more detail on that, so we'll have that coming forward. Some of the posts that Malcolm mentioned originally, some of them may be health and social care posts, so they wouldn't be a saving that we could take as a corner anyway. So I think a bit more detail on that would be helpful for us, and will be coming the next series, if not before. In terms of the toilets, I think there's an opportunity to charge So we still have the facility and actually potentially turn a profit. So actually invest in it rather than so the saving an investment instead. But again, a little bit of work needs to be done on that. So I think that's one of the reasons it's there as a proposal. And the third sector being affected by the savings. Again, there's so many things that we wouldn't do if we weren't in the situation that we were having to make savings. If we had a better settlement from the government, if the grant was suitable for our needs, a lot of these things we wouldn't be doing. Unfortunately, the third sector is being affected for this one specifically. The rest of our services are being affected for the other 1.7 million. So unfortunately, I still think, as much as I would rather not be doing these things, I think it's something that we have to do as a council. So I commend this budget to you, and thank you to my seconder for the support.
Okay, thank you very much, Leader. I'll now ask Derek Mackay to take the vote by roll call.
Those wishing to vote for the motion proposed by the Leader, seconded by the Deputy Leader, should clearly say motion. Those wishing to vote for amendment proposed by Councillor Susan Thompson, seconded by Councillor Ray Mackenzie, clearly say amendment. Nachgarum.
Amendment.
Leader. Duncan McInnes, MBE. Kenneth John McLean. Ian A. McNeil. Ian M. MacLeod. Susan Thompson. Mustafa Hussein. Euston Robertson. Apologies from Paul Finnegan. Grant Fulton.
Amendment.
Robert Mackenzie. Angus Morrison. Ranald Fraser.
Motion.
Norman MacDonald. John Norman MacLeod.
Amendment.
Donald McSween. Donald F. Crichton. Apologies from Johnny McKeever. Colin McLean.
Motion.
Ian M. Macaulay. Malcolm K. MacDonald.
Motion.
Gordon Murray. Ray Mackenzie. Angus McCormack. Dr. Francis Murray. Apologies from George Murray. Norrie MacDonald.
Motion.
And Finlay M. Stewart. We have 18 votes for the motion and 8 votes for the amendment.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek. And that then concludes today's meeting of the full council. And like other chairs were mentioning at the respective meetings during the day, I would also like to pay tribute to our officers, particularly Norman and the team in finance, for their hard work over the past while. It's been very much appreciated, and to turn everything around, in a short time scale and with the cyber attack last November, I think it's highly commended, and all the other officers as well, and the chief executive leading from the front. So I think as members, we should be very grateful for the work that was put into this year's budget. So Tapalaisha, and the next scheduled meeting of the Comhairle will be on the 1st of May 2024. So Tapalaisha.